Hello and welcome to the curriculum preview for the third 6 weeks for 7th grade. Our focus this 6 weeks is on fiction, drama, persuasive text, specifically speeches, and then writing an expository and a narrative essay. There's several things to consider as we begin the 6 weeks, but we always start with what the standards require. First, we look at the standard of 3A, identification of multiple themes within the same text. So for this standard, we need a good piece of dense text that has more than one theme. Students have had practice in identification of implicit themes and explicit themes, but not really with multiple themes within the same text. So they tend to focus on one theme and forget that there could be more than one. Standard 3B has us looking at conventions of myths and epic tales and being able to identify those conventions. Standard 6A is the influence of the setting on the plot. Specifically, how does where a story take place influence what happens in the story? 6B looks at plot through character development. So how does the development of the plot happen through what happens with characters? 6C is point of view, including first person, third person omniscient, and third person limited. Students have a lot of experience with point of view, especially first person and third person, but they've never really talked about third person omniscient and third person limited. Point of view really, though, is a review skill for first person and third person. Standard 5A is drama, and it looks at how the playwright develops both protagonist and antagonist through dialogue and staging. So what does the playwright do with their characters that shows the actions of the characters and how the character acts and gives us insight into the protagonist and the antagonist, specifically through what they say and how they act on the stage. Standard 11A is analyzing contemporary policy speeches, and right now we have a lot of those with the political things going on. So we can find some things like that, but we can also find some things, in videos and places that people can actually see the speech as well as hear it and read it. In 11B, it's to identify rhetorical fallacies, which is a pretty new idea to these students. We need to remember that process skills are very critical and that they overlay with each of the isolated skills. 58% of our release test from 2016 came straight from Figure 19. So that tells us that skills cannot be taught in isolation from metacognitive processes. Everything we do has to go back to making an inference, drawing a conclusion, summarizing our learning, and going from the start. So let's take a look at what the 2016 STAR did with the standards that are taught this 6 weeks. So we'll start with 6A. The question was, how does the setting advance the plot of the story? And these were our answers. You can see it's not necessarily what does the setting do, but the word advance is probably a new vocabulary word for our students. And I think it could be a direct teach word about what does it mean to advance the plot. And you can see this is really an inferential question because there's not a straight answer. We have to think about it and find evidence to support our answer. 6B, why are the woman's comments about the nest in paragraphs 6 through 10 important to the story? So they're talking about a character, the woman, and then you have to go to specific paragraphs, pull out the comments about the nest, and then determine why they're important. That's a lot of steps to answer one question. Students also need probably practice in doing some of these things where they're only looking at specific paragraphs or specific sections so that they can do that. But you can see this is tied to the standard on dialect and conversational voice, but it's really about her comments. It doesn't necessarily go back to how she speaks or the voice she uses. It talks about what she says. Another question on 6B was that the narrator's observation in paragraph 2 are important to the story because. And it's the same thing about, even though it says dialect and conversational voice, It's asking about the importance of what they say. A 6C question says using the first person point of view allows the author to. Previously, we've seen questions about first person allows the reader or has an impact on the reader, but this one now talks about author's craft. When a person writes in first person point of view, what does it do? What are they able to do? And so I think it's important for the students to not only identify point of view in their reading, they also need to identify a point of view in their writing and explain why they chose that point of view in terms of craft. When we looked at the writing test for 7th grade, there were very few isolated 7th grade skills. A lot of them were previously taught skills, and we'll be breaking that down in future previews. But things that popped out really quick were some academic vocabulary concerns. One was the word extraneous sentence. We've always said an extra sentence, a sentence that doesn't make sense, a sentence that doesn't fit, but I don't think we've ever seen the word extraneous sentence. There was also questions that asked about descriptive sentence, questions that asked for clarity, and then questions for word choice that said which word would be the best replacement for. So these are question stems and words that we need to be using with our students. Some resources that could help with this 6-week standards are Strategy 16 in the Text and Lessons for Content Area Reading book. It's on page 100. It's an annotation strategy specifically focusing on point of view, so you annotate from a point of view. There's also Lesson 6.4 in Text and Lessons for Literature on page 117, and it's note-taking specifically about point of view. So you could really do those two together as a way to focus two different ways on point of view. Mini Lessons 28 and 29 from the Mini Lessons for Revision book by Susan Guy focus on some combining sentences and varying sentence beginnings, which will help you with your essay writing. And then rhetorical fallacies. This is really new for students, and they're going to need some good practice and some good resources of things they can go back to. So there's some strong definitions and examples in Appendix D of the 4x4 book, Practical Methods for Writing Persuasively. As always, I'm here to support you, and if you need any help or need any information, just give me a call. Thanks.